Welcome to the American Railroading Podcast, brought to you by the Revolution Rail Group, live from the great state of Texas. Join us as we educate, entertain, and explore the world of American railroading. Here's your host, industry veteran, Don Walsh.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to the American Railroading Podcast. I am your host, Don Walsh, President and CEO of the Revolution Rail Group. We are the anchor sponsor for the American Railroading Podcast. We're a consulting and brokering firm in the railcar industry, so if you're in need of any kind of consulting services, whether it's merger and acquisition consulting, process flow analysis, market analysis, we can help you with that. We can also help you with brokering services, whether you're buying, selling, leasing, or subleasing rail cars. You can reach out to us today at 844-455-3434 or info@therevolutionrailgroup.com. You can also check out our full suite of services at our website at therevolutionrailgroup.com. Well, Producer John, we've made it to episode 20. Today is episode 20, which is crazy. I remember when I first started the podcast, Producer John said that the average podcast only lasts one episode. And then if you make it to episode 3, you're a rock star.
That's it.
We're on top of the world, right? Episode 20 right now. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Woohoo.
Congratulations, Producer John. We've done it.
Congratulations, Don. You've done it, man. You've done it.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to all of our listeners, our followers as well. And I can't believe it's fall. So happy fall, y'all. Halloween is here. By the time this episode airs, it will likely be on Halloween. So hopefully you're dressed in your finest costume listening to us right now. And Thanksgiving is right around the corner, which I always look forward to because I get to spend a lot of time with family and friends. And I'm sure Producer John and I will have another back and forth on our November episode about what dishes we like the least or like the most at Thanksgiving, like we did last year. But thanks to y'all, we remain in the top 10% of all podcasts globally, which is a total blessing. So thank you again for that. And we've been downloaded now in 45 countries. So we've added a new country. Well, technically, I don't know that it's a country. It's under Great Britain's rule, but we'll get to that in just a second here. But we now have 45 different places that have listened to us all around the world and 35 different platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, Radio, and others. So the all-time leaders are the United States by far as downloads. Canada is still number 2 all-time. Australia is still number 3 all-time. But in the last month, UK has sprung into second place. So thank you to everybody in the UK. And maybe it was our last guest, Nigel Bennett with the Illinois Railway Museum. That's where he's originally from. So maybe he's spread the word with family and friends back in his home country. But Singapore is now in third this last month, with Australia, Sweden, and the Isle of Man making a strong showing. So Isle of Man is actually the newcomer. So welcome to everybody listening to us in the Isle of Man, as well as our friends in Germany and Mexico. So Mexico may have risen up a little bit this last month because of my trip to Cabo San Lucas, where I snuck away for a week with some friends, and it was beautiful, by the way. So if you're looking for a place to travel to for a little bit of a getaway, Cabo was amazing. And of course, Sammy Hagar's Cabo Wabo was pretty cool too. Please continue to download, continue to share and subscribe, and leave us reviews. So reviews really help our podcast out a bunch. So when you leave us a 5-star review and a little comment about what you liked about the podcast, it actually helps to push us further and further out into the interwebs and allows more people to listen to us and to find us. So please leave us reviews. And if you liked what you've heard on the podcast, you can also buy us a cup of coffee. So if you go on our website, you'll see a little yellow coffee cup in the bottom left-hand corner. You can click on that and you can buy us 1 cup, 3 cups, 5 cups, or however many cups of coffee you want. And it's like leaving us a tip for doing a good job. So if you like what we do here on the podcast, you can leave us a little tip by buying us a cup of coffee, and it really does go to help with our endeavors on the podcast. Don't forget also we have a YouTube channel, and our YouTube followers has doubled over the last couple of months. So obviously y'all really like the YouTube channel. So thank you again for that. You can watch our videos on YouTube at American Railroading Podcast. Again, it's YouTube at American Railroading Podcast, or also on our website at the American Railroading Podcast, AmericanRailroading.net. And click on the videos tab, and you can watch all of our videos there as well. Be sure to check out our online store. So with fall here and winter right around the corner, we have lots of stuff that you can wear to show off American Railroading pride and American Railroading Podcast pride as well. Whether it's hats, pullovers, hoodies, you've got all kinds of gear on there. So go to, again, our website at AmericanRailroading.net and click on our store tab, and you can shop to your heart's desire, which includes challenge coins. So those of you with military background, you're very familiar, I'm sure, with challenge coins. So we created the challenge coins at the beginning of this year with our friends in Dallas. And it's really to show our respect and admiration and recognition for those that have served in the U.S. Armed Forces that now work in the railroad industry. And by buying some challenge coins, you're also helping out our friends over at Boots for Troops. So a portion of the sales of our challenge coins this year will go toward Boots for Troops. So we really appreciate you supporting us through buying our merchandise on our store, as well as supporting Boots for Troops by buying some challenge coins this year. So thank you. We are continuing to take on podcast sponsorships. So we only have one gold sponsorship remaining. We have several silver sponsorships remaining. So if you're interested in being a sponsor of the American Railroading Podcast, you can reach out to us today at marketing@americanrailroading.net. Again, it's marketing@americanrailroading.net. And with that said, I'd like to take a moment just to tell you a little bit about our platinum sponsor, the Alden Company. Founded in 1904, Alden has been an industry leader, charting a steady course in the manufacturing and distribution of a wide variety of railroad safety and track repair tools and more. The Alden website boasts over 800 catalog items to choose from, with categories including track maintenance and repair, derailers and railers, signs and lights, wheel chocks and stops, rail cars and locomotives, and even truck docks. Alden provides outstanding customer service with a wide variety of solutions, and when you call them, you will always get a real person to talk to, not an automated service. While based in the Chicagoland area, the Alden name is known internationally, and with over 120 years in the rail industry, they're a company you can count on. Please reach out to our friends at Alden today at 847-623-8800 or e-rail@aldenco.com. You can also review all of their products and resources on their website at www.aldenco.com. Alden, keeping things on track since 1904. So today we're going to discuss railroad safety, which we've yet to really get into. We've talked about hazmat safety before, but not necessarily railroad safety. And we're going to be talking about safety regarding both freight and passenger railroads, which also we haven't talked about passenger railroad much. So this will be a first. And I couldn't think of a better guest to have with us today than our guest for today is Crystal Blasius. Hopefully, Crystal, I pronounced that right. And
you did.
Great. So Crystal is Director of Safety Investigations for Amtrak, and she's based in Wilmington, Delaware. So Crystal began her career in the railroad industry 16 years ago as a conductor for the DM&E, who I remember fondly, and the Canadian Pacific Railroad post-acquisition of the DM&E. Crystal then joined the Genesee in Wyoming as a train master and was later promoted to Director of Safety and Compliance. Today, in addition to being the Director of Safety Investigations for Amtrak, Crystal also volunteers for several organizations, including being a board member for the Delaware Safety Council, a board member for Operation Lifesaver for Vermont, New York, and Massachusetts, and as a presenter for Operation Lifesaver as well. Crystal served our country in the United States Navy as an FC-3 for our Controlman third class. As part of her Navy FC-3 duties, Crystal worked at NATO's launch control for their self-defense system. Last but certainly not least, and some of you may recognize Crystal's name, that is because she is the winner of the 2024 American Railroading Podcast Honor Our Heroes Award, sponsored by Boots for Troops. And with that, I say welcome, Crystal, to the American Railroading Podcast.
Hello. That was quite the intro there. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, good. I was going to do a little drum roll, but I was on practice.
A lot of years to fit in there in just a few seconds. Yeah.
Well, and it's a great background and diverse background as well, and a lot of safety, which we're going to talk about today. So I want to congratulate you again. How does it feel to be the 2024 winner of our Honor Our Heroes Award?
It's still surreal. It sounds really weird, but it's like, did that actually happen? Yeah, apparently it did. Add it to the box. Yeah.
And your friend Joe Malik had actually nominated you, and Joe won our award last year. So I think it was very appropriate that the previous winner nominated our current winner, which I think is great.
Joe is a fantastic guy. I mean, I can't think of anybody else that better deserved it than him. And he just continues to promote and push, especially for our military, the transitioning military. Yeah.
Absolutely. So tell us a bit about your role as FC-3 in the U.S. Navy.
So it's kind of an interesting, you guys talked about fire controlman and you thought blazing fires, and it wasn't blazing fires, but it's definitely different. It's very intense because, if you don't like electricity, you don't play with that. That's the main crux of it, is being an electrical technician with the complex nature of surface to air missiles, yes, you can't have a low ASVAB score for that one.
I imagine not. And I'm blaming Jimmy Rogers from Boots for Troops from getting your title wrong on that. So Jimmy, I know you're listening. She was not fighting fires, my friend. Some Navy guy you are. And he's literally 2 buildings away from here, so I'm going to go give him a hard time after this. So,
Good.
What got you interested in railroading in the first place?
Oh, what a story that is. So there were so many of us in the 2007-8 debacle that happened, and I happened to work for a sub manufacturing outfit in Madison, South Dakota, and they decided one day, well, they're going to close that plant and move it on back up to Thief River Falls. And so myself and my husband both, we were now going to be out of a job very quickly. And I'm reading the newspaper. Does anybody read the newspaper anymore? I don't think so. But I'm reading the newspaper looking for jobs, as one did back in 2007. And I saw this ad in the newspaper that said hiring conductors for the Dakota, Minnesota, and Eastern, based out of Huron, South Dakota. And I was like, well, that sounds pretty cool. And yeah, I didn't know anything about trains. I didn't know anything. I'd never met a railroader and didn't know nothing about them. And I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. And applied and was subsequently interviewed, and they kept hammering on are you going to be able to answer the phone 24/7 and work 365 and all of these things. I'm like, yep, sure can. And well, here's the rest is history.
That's
now
awesome.
I live in New Jersey.
Right. I was going to say you had to make a big move then from there to where you are now.
Yeah. So joined the railroad, and it was not very long until I was questioning my life's choices because it's really cold in South Dakota.
It
like,
is.
The coldest I've ever experienced in my entire life, because I was raised in Oklahoma, so I wasn't used to the cold like that, and was -35 actual temperature, double pane glass windows, and there's frost on the inside of those windows. That's cold.
Sounds about right, though.
Yeah.
And I've actually had friends from Texas that have moved to South Dakota and said, "Oh, I'm not gonna miss the heat at all," and then until their first winter, then they're ready to come back. So, but it's funny though, because it does depend on where you were brought up. Because I was brought up in the cold, so I couldn't wait to get to the warmth. And people that were born in the warmth and raised in the warmth can't wait to get to the cold. So it always seems to work out that way. But you've worked for short lines, you've worked for class ones, you've worked with freight and passenger rail, all of which involves safety, and all of which we're going to touch on just a bit today as we go through the episode. So of all the subject matter we've discussed on our podcast over the last 19 episodes up to now, we've never really discussed passenger rail. So I think it's really exciting. We're going to get into that today, and safety regarding passenger rail and freight rail as well. With that said, I'd like to start out with talking about Amtrak a little bit in your current role with Amtrak. So it's hard to believe that Amtrak celebrated their 50th anniversary in 2021. For whatever reason, I would have thought Amtrak was around even longer than that. So it's pretty neat that they just had their 50th not long ago. And per the Amtrak website at amtrak.com, that's amtrak.com, the quote says, on May 1st, 1971, when the first Amtrak train rolled out of New York City en route to Philadelphia, no one could have imagined what lied ahead. Yet, here we are today with more than 17,000 dedicated employees, which is enormous, and a national system connecting more than 500 destinations across 46 states, the District of Columbia, and 3 Canadian provinces, on more than 21,400 miles of routes. That is huge. I never knew it was that large, but it makes total sense. So my first question to you about Amtrak is Amtrak considered a railroad?
Yes.
It is.
Absolutely. Amtrak is considered a railroad and one of the largest construction companies right now because of all of the capital development that is going on. It's massive. That infrastructure bill, it's great.
Right. Yes.
It's fantastic.
And you guys and Amtrak got quite a bit of the infrastructure bill resources, so that's exciting. And here's a little tidbit for our trivia friends out there. So Amtrak, this is interesting. I didn't know this until researching for the episode today. The actual name is the National Railroad Passenger Corporation, doing business as Amtrak. So it's the National Railroad Passenger Corporation. I never knew that. Never knew that.
Yes, American Track.
Right? That makes sense. TRAK.
Yeah.
So for those of you that
K,
spelled it wrong
yes.
like I did. So does Amtrak operate on its own track?
Actually, yes. For those that are familiar with the Northeast Corridor, it is 450 something miles of, and that is it. That's all that Amtrak owns. Just that. All of the other tens of thousands of miles that Amtrak operates over do not own that. We do not own that. All of that is freight. And so, you don't necessarily build new railroads these days. So everybody's got to share the same road. And most of the time we get the right of way, but not all the time.
Well, and that was one of my questions, is surely there's freight traffic that is coming in at the same time as Amtrak traffic, and scheduling, there'd be scheduling conflicts, I would assume. So who or what determines who goes first?
Well, we're supposed to go first because we're short. We fit everywhere and we get out of the way really fast, right? Because we are allowed to move faster naturally than freight trains are. But it does come down to their spacing. It's the dispatcher for whoever's road we're operating on. That's who determines who goes first. And then, of course, if there are issues or incidents or things happening in front of our train, we may, if possible, be rerouted around that. Not always possible. Or they may put us somewhere and say, you're going to have to wait. And if we have to wait for X number of hours, then we will put a bus bridge up for our passengers to get to their next destination.
Oh, that's interesting. I never knew that. Okay.
Yes.
So there's ways of making up for downtime, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I would imagine that does create scheduling conflicts from time to time, but that is an interesting way to work around that. So how would that work then? Where would the bus take them?
So it's whatever the next stop is. And let off the passengers at that location and just keep moving.
Okay.
Until they can either board a new train or, of course, they've detrained in between.
Hopefully not departed.
Not departed. Not dearly either.
Yeah.
No.
Well, and so I want to take a moment now just to recognize our gold sponsor, EnviroServe. EnviroServe is America's premier provider of comprehensive, reliable, effective, and eco-friendly environmental solutions for the rail industry. Their rail services include mobile rail car cleaning, flaring, interior blasting and transloading, removal and replacement of tank car service equipment, and leak testing. Complete HAZ and non-HAZ waste handling, management, remediation, and disposal services, 24/7 emergency spill response, and more. To learn more, please visit their website at www.enviroserve.com. Okay, so let's jump into your current role, which is very exciting, as Director of Safety Investigations for Amtrak. So I know you can't tell us a lot or everything that you do, right? Because some of it's private and what have you. But what is it you can tell us about your role as Director of Safety Investigations for Amtrak?
What an interesting question.
I try.
And the reason why it's an interesting question is because every day I'm writing the playbook of what this role does. I mean, because I'm the first one to have this role. It's never existed before me. Basically, what I do is I am responsible for the processes and procedures related to incident investigation at Amtrak. We look at different trends and look at the different factors, the scenarios, injuries, all of those things. And the bigger ones, the ones that meet a certain severity level, those are the ones that I get directly involved with. Ones that what happened was not necessarily the actual thing that happened, could have been much more severe. As an example, one would be I had to be engaged with a derailment post collision. So our train collided with a I would call it a trespassing, but it was a vehicle stuck at a crossing. They were fouling the crossing, and our train came through. And the way that our engines are a lot different than freight. Freight can take some serious impact. Ours are not designed to do that. Ours are designed to go fast, and with little, resistance. And we derailed. We hit a car, derailed. So going and digging into all of the details of why and what for, and how we can improve, and taking the process from what the deliverables that have to go out to our executive team and things like that, briefing our executive team on how we're going to make it better the next time, because there will be a next time. In the railroad industry, it's not an if you hit someone, it's a when you hit someone, unfortunately.
Yeah. And so the freight rail industry generally only gets talked about when there's a derailment. And then the media gets involved and tends to imply that our industry is unsafe. And yet the statistics show that freight trains get where they're going safely without incident 99.9901% of the time. And even former STB chairman Marty Oberman has been quoted as saying that rail is the safest way to ship by land. And of course, I'm paraphrasing for Marty there. But can you share with our audience how safe it is to travel by Amtrak for passenger rail? And do you have any statistics that show kind of where Amtrak ranks in comparison to other modes of passenger travel?
So passenger travel, it really blew my mind when I moved out east. Prior to being here, I was based out of Rochester, New York. And, there's some passenger stuff there. And then I come out here and I'm able to enjoy and experience the whole passenger rail thing. And it's wildly efficient. So as an example, on average, 78,000 people move on Amtrak per day. How safe is it?
Wow.
I mean, to wrap your head around that for a minute. We've got, when was the last time you actually heard of Amtrak being in the news for something significant?
Yeah, never.
Yeah.
Well, and you've worked with safety with both freight and passenger rail, which is amazing, the diversity of your background. So what are some of the greatest differences you see between freight and passenger rail safety-wise?
Safety-wise, the difference between freight and passenger, and this is going to be a little odd, but it is the responses, the engagement of, it's actually the engagement of management with whoever may be involved with it. So those that, that your conductor and engineer, the way that they are engaged with management versus your conductor, your engineer, your secondary engineer, your first conductor, your second conductor, all of your onboard people, how that is handled and how that is managed. Because Amtrak, the difference that I have noticed the most is, even though, we're a baby company in the railroad world, we still work towards the kind of a culture where it's safe to say something. It's safe to bring a safety concern ahead. And maybe that's on the route. Maybe that's in a curve. Maybe that's, this one location where everybody's always running the grade crossing. The people are treated much differently than they are in the freight side. The freight side is more discipline focused than on the passenger side, because the way that you treat your team members is the way they're going to treat your customers, and we got a whole lot more customers.
Yeah, 78,000 a day, which I had no idea. And that is an awful lot. So what, if any, similarities are there between freight and passenger rail?
Similarities. It's that they're the same struggles. They're the exact same struggles between making sure that people are following the guidelines. They're following the rules that they're supposed to follow. We have the same issues with, as an example, people running stop signals. It's getting the information, whatever is going on, down to that ballast level team, the professionals of the whole thing, the ones that make the magic happen, getting that information of what's going on in some other place to them, because they're the ones that are having to deal with the customers. They're the ones having to throw the switches, all of those things. So, and that's what I found whenever I was on the freight side too. It was the rolling of the information, the ability to get the feedback from the ballast level. That's the difference. How open are we to those ideas, those suggestions, their answers to their problem? Passenger is a whole lot more open. Yeah.
And when you say the ballast level, just for our audience, what does that mean? Ballast level to
the rocks on the rail.
Yeah. So, but it's the people that are working on the ground, essentially, is what you're saying.
That's right.
It gets from them to the management team.
Frontline team members.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Very good. And the FRA issued a train crew size safety requirements rule on April 9th of this year, 2024, essentially requiring a minimum crew size of 2 crew members. Does this rule apply to Amtrak crews as well?
So your average Amtrak train has 4 people on it, because you've got an engineer. Obviously, there's the engineers in the engine, in the front, reading the signals, reading, the switches, reading, talking to the dispatcher. However, the conductor is in the back of the train, in the body of the train, not in the front with the engineer. There may be another engineer. There's going to be onboard services individuals, that are not related to the train crew per se, but, we've got people that have been assistant conductors for 20 years because that's their preferred role. So, we already have that multiple team going on. So that doesn't necessarily apply to us.
Okay. And is there any requirements that you have with crews, as far as crew size? Is there a minimum that you do require for Amtrak?
So minimum, you have to have the conductor, because the conductor's back with the passengers. You have to have the engineer. On our longer, I say excursion, they're not excursions, but on our longer trips, long haul trips, we have it set up to where our preference is 2 engineers. If the trip is longer than 6 hours, we want 2 engineers up there because of fatigue, and just so that it's better for each of them to trade off. Yeah, and it's safer.
For sure. Absolutely. It's all about safety. Sure. So speaking of safety, again, what are some of the greatest safety challenges y'all face at Amtrak?
I would say would be, again, that information flow. It is helping our team members to see what they do matters. For them to not just say, oh, that's just a rule I need to follow, but to understand the why behind those rules. As any railroader knows, the book is written in blood, and for good, there's the reason that we have to do this. But 20 years after the information is written, the story's lost. So to me, the challenge is getting that legacy information from those people that have been around for so long, and getting it into the hands of those that are just now starting their careers, and bridging the gap of communication style that's out there that is pretty significant, especially between we do have boomers, and we have Gen Z coming on, and getting them to talk can be a challenge.
Well, and there's going to be a lot of folks retiring, right? So we want
yes.
to glean that information from them in every aspect of our industry before they step down. So I think mentorship programs are important and different things like that. And we've talked about that previously on the podcast as well. There's no replacing that knowledge. So hopefully we can get them to share it and to pass it on down. So railroad crossings are a major focus for safety initiatives all over the United States, including here in the Houston area with the Gulf Coast Rail District right here in Houston. And of course, there's Operation Lifesaver, which you're very involved with. So according to the Operation Lifesaver website at www.oli.org, there has been an 82% reduction in collisions, which is amazing, where it states on their website, and quoting here, "We've helped to reduce the number of train versus motor vehicle collisions from a 1972 high of roughly 12,000 annual incidents to approximately 2,200 incidents in 2019. And it quotes the source as the Federal Railroad Administration statistics. So it's an amazing reduction. So can you take a moment to give our audience an overview of Operation Lifesaver?
So Operation Lifesaver is a 501c3. We'll start there. It's completely nonprofit, and it is driven by volunteers. The volunteers come on because they believe in the message. And the message that needs to be shared with everyone is that trains can't be heard, not anymore, because we have noise canceling headphones, we have super speakers in our cars, we have distractions, we have screaming kids in the back seat, all of these wild distractions. The technology of the rail and the locomotives make it to where you can't hear them anymore. And then you put that with, of course, your quiet zones, not a fan, quiet zones where the engineer is limited, severely limited on when they can activate that whistle going through whatever location. And of course, quiet zones are not restricted to be quiet only, because if there's an emergency, if there's somebody on the tracks, that engineer is going to activate that whistle. But back to Operation Lifesaver, there's somebody that's hit in impact, somebody that encounters rail equipment every 3 hours, and that's pedestrians and that's vehicles. And of course, we all know that the thing out there that is the most vulnerable is not the train. Your average loaded freight train is 6,000 tons. Your average length of a freight train, of course, I know all about freight trains, but your average length of a freight train is 100 cars. So if you have a grade crossing incident, an impact, the chances of anything being left at that grade crossing might be the trailer to the semi that, decided he thought he could fit and would hear the train coming, is going to be a mile down the road. Because once you activate those emergency brakes, it's sliding, steel on steel, and you're sliding until you stop, and then you just have to wait. So, it's not, and that's the other thing is you may be in a hurry. Take that moment, enjoy that moment. You just got to stop because you don't have time to make up on the other side. I mean, it's terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll get to that in just a moment about a story that a friend of mine who's an engineer shared with me, and it was truly shocking to me. But we'll get to that in just a moment here. But Operation Lifesaver provides safety presentations and training sessions as well. And according to the website, again at oli.org, 858,620 people were reached thanks to OLI's safety presentations, training sessions, and special events. That is a huge number. And I believe you're certified to teach numerous of these classes, presentations, and special events. So can you take a moment to tell us a little bit about those types of training, special events, and presentations?
So I have presented in 10 states over the last 10 years, and I've reached over 3,000 people personally. The cool thing about all of it is we have the ability to do presentations with elementary school kids, with new drivers for driver's ed, professional drivers. Those were my favorite whenever I was out west, based in South Dakota, because those were our customers. They were crossing our tracks all the time. And they need to know how to pay attention. So then you have them, you have your general drivers, of course, but then you have my next favorite, which is the first responders. And Operation Lifesaver has now developed a program targeting law enforcement officers and fire department personnel. That is risk. It's called RISK, and it is Rail Investigation Safety Course, and it teaches them how to be safe around rail equipment, because a rail incident is completely different than anything else that they will ever experience. One, it might block up a whole town. It might prevent them from getting to another situation that's going on. There are all kinds of nuances about rail equipment incidents that they just don't know. One example is the blue and white sign. Do you know anything about the blue and white sign?
I do not.
So the blue and white sign, it's at every public and private rail crossing, and it is the emergency notification system sign. It's S is sign, but it has a 1-800 number on it. That 1-800 number changes based on who owns the railroad that you're sitting at. Okay? And the other thing, it is a federally mandated sign. 9x12 is the minimum size. The secondary number that's on there is very specific to the railroad that you're at. So, as an example, if I have an issue at a crossing in Newark, Delaware, pretty sure that's how they pronounce it there, but anyway, and I call the 1-800 number on that sign, and I say I'm at Main Street, CSX is going to go, which one? Because they operate in 26 states. CSX is dispatched out of Jacksonville, Florida. So which Main Street are we talking about? That's why that secondary number is so important. And there's also, for those of you that would like to know, there is an FRA grade crossing locator app that is available. So if you are somewhere, you can't find the sign, there's actually an app that will tell you who owns it. And you can call that, and they have the number and all of that other good stuff. Or G&W. Okay, let's say you're in Illinois and you're on, and call that number. Where do you think they're dispatched out of?
Wyoming somewhere?
Vermont.
I was going to say, not Illinois.
They're dispatched out of Vermont, and Genesee and Wyoming, that's a county in New York State.
Learning new things today. Lots of new things today. That's what this podcast is all about.
That's right.
But I believe some of your recent training has been focused on bus drivers, which I think is fascinating. So what can you tell us about that, and why the focus on bus drivers?
Because they haul our most precious cargo. Mm-hmm. And it is absolutely shocking, some of the head-in video that we are able to see. And it doesn't matter who it's from, freight, passenger, doesn't matter, about what some of these bus drivers choose to do with our children at grade crossings. Getting too close, not clearing, there's an overhang behind that bus. Well, it's, if you don't fit, don't commit, right? Which is what they say in the training. And it is, we've reached 1,500 people, and that's just bus drivers and their assistants in the state of Delaware since the new version came out, which was in June, I believe, June or July. The Department of the Education here in Delaware said, you got to get it done. So that was a good push.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely helped motivate a little bit. And the number one thing people ask me, which no matter where I am, is why, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, why do locomotive engineers blow the horn at every crossing? And so in one instance, I was in a small town in South Carolina, I believe it was, and the downtown area was a bit of an angle versus the railroad line. So the main line that would come through would cross 12 or so intersections, across the downtown, and it would blow the horn all the way through at 3 o'clock in the morning. So can you just explain why blowing the horn is important to do at a railroad crossing?
So one of the things is that everyone forgets is that trains can't be heard unless they're blowing the whistle. It's not a horn, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
Unless they're blowing the whistle. But it is a federally required thing that has to happen, and the sequence is just as important because back when we didn't have radios, that's when the sequence came about. We would talk to our other people on the train through those whistle sequences, and we still do. And it's unfortunate that there's 12 crossings in really close proximity to each other, but unless you're able to put in and manage and maintain a quiet zone, which is exceptionally expensive, I mean, almost prohibitive to any town that is smaller than 50,000 people, then there's going to be whistles all the time, regardless, because trains don't run on schedule.
And surely there's requirements around obtaining a quiet zone. I wasn't even familiar with that until you brought it up. So what is a quiet zone, and what would the requirement be for something like that?
So some of the things that I know about quiet zones is that the crossing itself has to be set up in such a way that prevents people from being able to go around the gates at all. So there's barricades in the middle. There's 4 quad gates that'll come down, and of course there are no whistle. There are signs like that, but that does not say that the engineer cannot use his whistle, because if there's a person on the tracks, if there's some other kind of emergency, whatever, and people like to play on the tracks because they think they can hear the trains coming, then he's allowed to do that, or they are allowed to do that. And
again, I made a note here. It's not a horn. It is a whistle.
It's not a horn.
Duly noted. And I have friends who are engineers. You were an engineer as well, right? I believe in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the frequency with which people try to beat the train at a crossing is shocking to me. And I've actually asked one of my friends, how often do you end up tragically, hitting someone or a vehicle or a person? And they say once a year. Each engineer once a year, and that is obviously it's too much, but these are people putting themselves in harm's way. It's the train doesn't go anywhere but the track, so it's not like the train is made a wrong turn or something, right? So what information can you share with our audience to deter them to even trying to beat a train at a crossing? So
it's pretty wild, is one of the number one thing is, if your children are in that car, it's not the driver that gets hit. That's one way to think about it. The second one is your kids are paying attention. They're watching you do it. Therefore, when they get old enough to drive, they're going to do it too. One of my favorite videos from OLI is a mother that talked about her daughter doing it, and then at the end she says, I used to do it. And it's like, why would you do that? You have time. Wait. Just wait. Because what's on the other side? It'll be there when you get there. Just take a minute, breathe, enjoy it. Somebody's slowing you down for a reason. Take a hint.
That's right. And it also it affects everyone. It affects the engineer. It affects, if it's a passenger train, it affects those on the train as well, because I have been on passenger trains when I lived in Chicago, going back and forth to work where there were incidents. And as a passenger, you never forget that. It makes an impact on you as well. So yes, please take your time. And like you said, wherever you're going, we'll be there when the train goes past. Taking selfies and portraits on railroad tracks. Now, this has always driven me nuts. I get it. It's picturesque and everything, but it's dangerous. And I'm pretty sure it's illegal, right? So am I right in that?
It is illegal because railroad tracks are owned by the railroad. They are private property. It's as if someone came into your backyard and decided they wanted to take a selfie with your tree. Same thing. Would we take a selfie in the middle of the highway? That's not recommended. No, it might not end so well. But the thing about selfies, pictures, some photographers don't know that it's illegal. I'll hear the train coming. We will be able to get out of the way. A train traveling at 59 miles an hour is covering 120 feet a second. Are you really going to hear it coming? Probably not. Not on ribbon rail and not with a brand new engine, because they're not going to blow the whistle. You won't hear them coming from miles away, especially in, the great state of Wyoming or something, No whistles.
Well, and my concern too has been
it's illegal.
Well, my concern too is what if your foot gets stuck or something?
What if your foot gets stuck?
It's just not worth it. And again, yeah, I get it. It's picturesque, but I see so many of these pictures on social media and it's like, man, please. Again, it's all about safety, in today's world of AI and different ways you can do green screens, you can superimpose yourself. I'd rather you do that.
Yeah.
So this one, I think you're going to enjoy a lot, this question here. What do you like most about what you do?
I love my job. I really love my job. It is it's like being my own CSI, peeling how many layers does this onion have until we get to the actual root, the causes, the multiple, because it takes multiple to come together before something happens. Getting down to that, finding a solution for it, and figuring out how to make the lives of those that are affected, those field professionals, better. How do we do that? And because it impacts not just them at this one location, it can impact, every person in that role system-wide for Amtrak, which that's, 21,000 miles of track that we operate over. So it's making a difference. That's what I love about it most, is making the difference.
Well, and for those that aren't that familiar with Amtrak, do you want to give kind of a 30,000-foot view of Amtrak and the different types of adventures people can go on?
Adventures. It is adventurous.
Right?
The train trip is adventurous. I had the pleasure of going on the auto train, the only one that exists in the United States, that runs from Sanford, Florida to Lorton, Virginia. And it's a 19-hour trip, which you're like, oh my goodness, why would I do that? No. Let's think about this for a minute. You load your vehicle on the train. You get on the train. You can get up and have dinner and buy some food and walk around and, all of that stuff. And then you get off at the other end in Sanford, Florida, which is 30 minutes from Orlando, and you have your vehicle. You now have 700 miles that your vehicle doesn't have on it. I mean, it's a win. The other one is coming up November 10th. We are starting the Floridian, which is a new route, and it says that it's going to take 47 hours. That sounds like a whole lot, but again, it's the adventure of the train itself. And traveling through from Chicago all the way to Miami on train. So, but as I've mentioned more than once, those aren't our tracks. Those belong to CSX, NS, whoever, somebody else that keeps really good tracks. Yeah.
And you
can't run on all of them.
No. And there's a trip, and I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about, but I just can't think of what it's called. There's a trip that you can take. I know you can take it from Chicago for sure, where it goes through the Rocky Mountains, and there's a panoramic car that you can see, as the leaves are changing through the mountains and stuff. And I believe it takes you to Washington State, and then you can jump on a cruise ship there and go whale watching. So is that the one behind you there? For those of you watching on YouTube?
The Empire Builder.
Okay, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
That one I highly recommend the Empire Builder because it actually travels along the border of Canada, through Minot and Montana. So if you know anything about Montana, there's a reason why those mountains are in the background. Fantastic views. Fantastic views. The other one that I would recommend is the California Zephyr, Chicago, Emeryville, California.
Very good. And,
same long distance thing.
And do you have one of the trips on your bucket list you haven't done yet?
That one.
That one? That's it?
The Empire Builder, yeah, because I actually believe it originates out of New York City originally. And Chicago is just a waypoint.
When you watch movies and there's trains involved, you go, that would never happen, right? And so there's one with Denzel, and I love Denzel, and I want to say it's called Runaway or something like that, right? And in particular, there was a part in the movie, and I love the movie, so please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying anything disparaging, but there's a part in the movie where an FRA inspector comes into the office where I guess everybody's trying to figure out from the railroad what the next steps are. And they throw this FRA inspector out, tell him to get the hell out of the office or whatever. And I'm thinking, man, that would never happen, or it would happen once. So is there anything like that when you look at movies or a way that the railroads are represented safety-wise or other ways, and you're like, man, that would never happen in real life?
Absolutely. And that movie is one of them because I suppose it's like watching the Packers lose. But you're screaming at the TV going, no, that is not true whatsoever, and that is not going to happen. Yeah, there was a whole lot of no when I was watching that movie.
Well, if they ever need consultants on future movies, the two of us, I'm sure, will be willing to help, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And as far as the Packers loss, I mean, me personally, I'd be okay with that. That's just me being a Bears fan. But I respect your opinion nevertheless. If there's one thing you want our audience to take away from today's episode regarding railroad safety, what would it be?
It would be that blue and white sign, that emergency sign. And the reason why I say that is because that's the sign that gets you to the dispatcher that owns those tracks. That dispatcher is the one that can talk to the train that's on those tracks, not the owner of the train itself. So as an example, we had, train running through, let's say, Virginia, and car gets stuck on the tracks. They call 911 instead. Well, 911 is going to have to call somebody else. And in that amount of time that it could take for them to get a hold of the right railroad company, the train showed up. So if you get stuck on the tracks, if there's an issue, you see something else going on the tracks, if you get stuck, get out of your vehicle. If you see something else going on, it looks like some suspicious activity going on, call that blue sign, call that number, and give them the information from that blue sign and let them know. Because most of, especially freight, they can't see if there's the lights are flashing at the particular crossing for way too long. They can't see it. So when you call that, lights are on, they've been on for 20 minutes, there's no train, they will dispatch out a person to investigate it and fix it. So, yeah.
Now, is there any
blue and white sign will save your life.
And where is that blue and white sign, or where should people look for that?
Crossbucks, if you know what crossbucks are, the big X, well, it should be on that post somewhere very near wherever that crossing is. It might be on a signal bungalow, and it's on every private and public crossing right there.
Very good.
both sides.
That's good to know because I honestly did not know that. So now when I drive home today, there's several crossings I go by and I'm going to look for that blue and white sign. I hope everybody does. That's wonderful information for people because I know that people often ask me, who do I call? Who do I call? And now we know it's right there on each individual crossing post.
Yes, each one. Because who you call in Indiana is not going to be the person you call in California.
Yeah, and your point about calling 911 and it actually delaying help is interesting, and I would never have thought of that, but that's an excellent point as well, is that they're not really the person in charge of that situation. So the blue and white sign is the best place to go.
Yes, the blue and white sign is the best place to go because if say you're a local somewhere and there are two crossings on the same road in that location and you say, I'm at this road to the 911 person, but there's two grade crossings on that same road owned by two different railroads. That blue and white sign is the only one that's going to give that extra number that tells exactly where you are. Because that 911 operator may call the wrong railroad.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then it is good, though, probably to call 911 after you call the number on the blue and white sign, I would guess. And I'm sure they're probably going to do the same, whoever's answering the phone at the blue and white sign number, I would assume. But you can call 911 just after you call the blue and white sign number.
If necessary.
If necessary. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, believe it or not, we're at the end of our episode already. We've gone through an hour together. And as I told you before, we could go on for several episodes about safety. And I know that we will because it's a topic that's very important. And we've shown just now why that's so important, sharing this kind of information with people that I know they didn't know about, I didn't know about. So is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we go today?
Just be safe out there. I mean, safety is not something that you hang up on the wall when you get home. It's a lifestyle, and things impact more than just you, the single person. If somebody is unsafe at work, it impacts their family. It's not just, it is definitely a ripple effect when something happens. And of course, outside, I don't recommend using a chainsaw without chaps, but you do you, I guess.
Yeah.
Not recommended.
No, and follow the safety protocols, right, that are out there.
That's right, because there's a reason they exist, that we don't just write rules because they make us feel good.
Yeah, and I can attest to the fact that operating unsafely or in an unsafe manner affects everyone, not just the person, performing the unsafe act, but it affects the people around that are impacted by it as well. Well, very good. Well, if somebody wants to reach out to you and contact you, how would they go about doing that?
So I do have LinkedIn, so that's usually the best way to reach out to me is on LinkedIn. And other than that, it could be at crystal.d.blasius@gmail.com.
And how do you spell Blasius?
Blasius.
There is no Z.
There is no Z.
Just so everybody understands, it's an S.
There's not a Z, no.
Well, very good. Well, would you like to join us again on our future episode?
Very, very possible, yes. This was quite enjoyable, yes.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And
there's so much more to talk about.
There really is. And I knew we'd have no problem getting through an hour. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. But I think it's very important, especially I'm glad we really talked about crossings today because that's something that we all encounter. And it's something that we see all too often, tragedy, happen that was avoidable entirely, So, yeah, it's good to conversate about this kind of thing and get it out there and talk about it more, and we will. So I also want to congratulate you once again on being the 2024 Honor Our Heroes Award winner. Thanks to our friends at Boots for Troops. We're going to get that care package out to you by Christmas, so you'll get to enjoy that in time for the holidays. And thank you again for your service to our country. Thank you for being such a promoter of safety, not only with Amtrak, but with the industry as a whole through Operation Lifesaver. And I encourage people to look up Operation Lifesaver as well at oli.org and become more familiar with there's training they can do online and all kinds of different things. But thank you again. Congratulations again on your award.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, and with that, I want to get into my 2 cents. So trains are beautiful, nostalgic, and even majestic, but they are also need to be treated with caution, as they are very powerful and take far longer to stop than you might think. We talked about that earlier. Far too long to stop on a dime, of course, and they can't swerve to avoid you. They're on a track. They can't go around you. So by all means, enjoy them, but also respect them and respect the laws regarding them as well. We want you to get home the same way you arrived. Take your time. Whatever you need to get to will be there after the train passes. And that's my 2 cents. With that, I'd again like to thank our platinum sponsor, the Alden Company. Founded in 1904, Alden has been an industry leader, charting a steady course in the manufacturing and distribution of a wide variety of railroad safety and track repair tools and more. The Alden website boasts over 800 catalog items to choose from, with categories including track maintenance and repair, derailers and railers, signs and lights, wheel chalks and stops, rail cars and locomotives, and even truck docks. Alden provides outstanding customer service with a wide variety of solutions, and when you call them, you will always get a real person to talk to, not an automated service. While based in the Chicagoland area, the Alden name is known internationally, and with over 120 years in the rail industry, they're a company you can count on. Please reach out to our friends at Alden today at 847-623-8800 or e-rail@aldenco.com. You can also review all of their products and resources on their website at www.aldenco.com. Alden, keeping things on track since 1904. I'd also like to once again recognize our anchor sponsor, which is the Revolution Rail Group. So again, we are a consulting and brokering firm in the railcar industry. So if you're needing help with process flow analysis, market analysis, merger and acquisition assistance, we can help you with that. We can also help you with buying, selling, leasing of rail cars. You can reach out to us today at 844-455-3434 or info@therevolutionrailgroup.com. And again, you can check out our full suite of services at our website at therevolutionrailgroup.com. Well, our next episode is coming up soon. It'll be Thanksgiving, which I'm really looking forward to because I love to eat. And I love to spend time with family and friends. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And until then, I say God bless, make it a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us on the American Railroading Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. And if you have a topic you'd like us to cover on a future episode or want to support or sponsor the show, please visit our website at AmericanRailroading.net.